Hello everyone, and welcome to the first devlog for our newest game, Orbital Abyss Cipher Division. For those of you joining us for the first time, we are a husband and wife, two-person indie development studio, now producing our second full-feature product. This new project is relatively different from our previous game, Alpaca Rancher. Alpaca Rancher is a cozy ranching game where you collect and care for alpacas. Cipher Division is a story-driven puzzle game where you intercept and decode messages from an isolated station on the edge of charted space. As you decode the messages, you learn about the worlds outside the confines of Eremite Station. As you interact with your fellow crewmates via messages called casts, you learn more about the people you work and live beside, as well as the stories unfolding within the station's own walls. The idea. The first spark for the idea came when James, our developer and my husband, watched a video on substitution ciphers. He found the idea very intriguing and wanted to use it in a game. From there, we had the core mechanic we wanted to build the game around. The concept for this game is actually similar to a game jam game we made several years ago called Long Distance. In that game, you're an agent working in a new, high-tech Morse code booth in a dystopian future. The intent of that game was to teach the player Morse code while going through a story. As we made that game on a short schedule, it fell short from that goal. The Morse code in that game was very tedious, and there wasn't much story as far as I remember. But the idea that it could be so much more stuck with both of us. Lastly, we knew we wanted this to be a story game. I've enjoyed writing from a young age and always wanted to take the opportunity to refine that skill. In preparation for this game, I've been watching writing lectures and of course writing. It's actually quite shocking to me how much writing has gone into this game. I've written over 50,000 words between all three acts. That of course includes all player choices and some author's notes, but it's 50,000 all the same. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share this story with you all once the game is finished. So that brings us to early development. We started with building the components for the substitution cipher. For my part, I started designing the symbols that would be used in the substitution ciphers. There are 5 major powers in the galaxy our story takes place in, so we will need an alphabet for each of them. It took a few iterations, but I feel I have managed to create 5 different alphabets that reflect some of the aspects of the societies that are using them. Having the different alphabets will help the player distinguish which faction they are decoding the cipher from. This also helps add some visual variation that wouldn't exist if we just had the same alphabet for each cipher. To further explain the concept of the game, the player is interacting with the game through the character's terminal. The character uses different apps to complete their various tasks throughout the day on Eremite Station, so what our main character would be doing, that's what the player is doing. So with that context in mind, we can discuss building the cipher decoding system. When building the system in the Godot game engine, we started out with the basics, selecting a symbol, and then selecting the English alphabet character you would like to replace that symbol with. We experimented with different colors. At this stage, we had a vision that we wanted color on the screen instead of just all white characters, but we weren't sure what that would look like. Next, we set about making the UI visually appealing. We started with an on-screen keyboard and experimented with using a hexagon shape for the button frames. Additionally, at this stage, we had the app's icon ribbon at the top of the screen, which is what allowed you to navigate through the different apps the player/character would use. Upon the next iteration, we moved the app's icon to the left-hand side of the screen and put the apps inside of hexagon frames as well. We found it very visually appealing and decided to use that concept for the entire cipher screen. We also changed the symbols themselves back to white, but added a semi-transparent blue frame behind them for more visual diversity. We then created app icons for all the apps and added additional frames and UI. From here, the foundation of the game was established. CAS, or messaging system. As I mentioned before, much of the story is conveyed to the player through messages to and from the NPCs called casts. Using this system, the player can choose how they wish to respond to the NPCs. We don't presently have much of this incorporated into the playable game, so you're not seeing it here, but this has been extensively outlined in our documents. The player's choices will affect how the NPC characters react to them and alter how the story progresses. When building this system, we originally had the idea that the messages would be more similar to emails. However, this didn't allow for as fluid of player interaction with the NPCs and made the player feel even more isolated than we intended for them to be. Instead, we made the cast messages more similar to an instant messenger. We then worked to build out the player's ability to respond to NPCs. Then we cleaned up the UI, and our next step is to integrate the story into the playable game fully. Decoding ciphers. One of the biggest problems in that Game Jam Morse code game was that nothing was really gamified. Sure, we were accomplishing our goal of the player transcribing messages into Morse code, but man, it took a long time and quickly became tedious. We wanted to ensure this was avoided in Cipher Division, so we set out to add features and tools to assist the player in solving the ciphers. The first tool is the essence of the substitution cipher. When selected, it allows the player to see the percentage an alphabet character appears in the sequence. This can then be compared to our cipher frequency sheet to help you discern which letter it might be. The sheet calculations aren't always one-to-one, as it is based generally on how frequently E, for example, appears in the English language. We found that the more characters our ciphers contain, the more accurate this tool becomes. We also worked to add highlighting to this tool so it would draw attention to all the symbols that character was used in for the cipher. We feel this helps the player identify patterns and make a more educated guess about what letter that symbol could be. A similar feature that was implemented is red highlighting to indicate to the player when a letter has been duplicately assigned. So for example, if I assigned A to both of these characters, it highlights red to let me know the character is incorrectly being used twice. We then added in a reset functionality where you could hold down the symbol to reset it. Additionally, there's a button that resets the entire cipher for if the player wants to start over with a clean slate. We also added in a toggle feature that lets the player switch between the alien alphabet and the English characters. We are experimenting with having a few characters unlocked at the start of the cipher. This gives the player a foothold that they can use to work to solve the cipher from there. We plan to have more characters unlocked on easier difficulties and less characters unlocked on harder difficulties, though we're still working to refine the details. If you have any ideas for tools or features that could be added to this portion of the game, feel free to comment them down below. Additional features. Cipher Division has simple colorblind modes that are achieved through Godot shaders, as well as the ability to scale font. This was one of the items of feedback we got on Alpaca Rancher. Many of our players wanted to be able to resize fonts, which Alpaca Rancher does not currently have the functionality for. We wanted to ensure Cipher Division did. Additionally, we are working to pursue Steam Deck verification for this game so we can get that ever-coveted green checkmark stating our game is compatible with the Steam Deck. The criteria include controller support, which both Alpaca Rancher and Cipher Division have, as well as some resolution configurations that we plan to have implemented in the final game. Cipher Division will then go through a review process with Steam and, fingers crossed, we'll get our verification. So what's next for us in the development of this game? We need to flesh out our Steam store page more. We have the foundation of the page available, but the About Us section needs some serious TLC. We will continue to update our Steam store page as we make progress in the game, so if you're interested in keeping up on developments, please wishlist and/or follow our game on Steam. We're also planning to do a UI polish pass to get the game looking as good as it possibly can. After I made the Steam store page art for our game, James mentioned we should try to incorporate some of those colors into the game. So we'll be exploring that in the weeks to come. We're also working to refine the story. We currently have the canon story path for the player to explore, along with 3 main endings, but we would like to add some additional pathways and content so the player can explore more. All in all, there's still a fair amount of work to complete on this game. Let us know in the comments what you think about the game so far. We're always open to feedback and would love to hear any ideas or suggestions you have for development. Thank you all, and we'll see you in the next devlog. Bye!